Good morning. I've got a bit of a different type of a project today. This long counter that sits at the front of the classroom here. The teacher and the principal, they'd like to basically delete the center section of it.
I'm really good at deleting things.
Buckle up for safety as I give you a day in the life of online. No, not online. I'm actually there. Facilities maintenance.
If you look down here, you can see there's a gap in between already. It's actually two separate bases connected by this center piece and a single piece of countertop. I just need to relocate that electrical plug. And other than that, it's really quite straightforward. I will cut this across here and the same across there. Leave a little bit of an overhang. From the edge of this here, I can salvage this piece of arborate. Same with the trim on the other side. And refinish the edge. And when I'm done, hopefully, what's it look like underneath here? Yeah, it's finished all the way up. This panel is a finished panel. Same on the other side. It should look all right. As for this plug, I can just relocate this to the side of this cabinet here. So I think the first thing that I will do is move that plug. I'm gonna need a straight edge to make my cut. I'm gonna need some tools. I have to make one more trip out to my truck to grab my tool bag out of there. But my heat gun, I have this to remove the arborate. This and this heavy duty scraper here. I have these clamps to clamp my straight edge down so that I can make my cut with my circular saw. On my circular saw, I have a nice fine blade, so that should make a nice cut. I've got the perfect straight edge right here. This piece right here that the electrical outlet is attached to will give me a nice straight edge that I will clamp along here to make these cuts. Unfortunately, I'm noticing that there's already a chip out of this countertop. It would be nice if I was making my cut on this side of that chip, but I'm not. I'm going to be cutting right here.
I'm working over part of the Christmas break, which is why there's nobody else around.
It's 8:30 and the sun hasn't even really come up yet. It's still this dusky look to the outside. Not complaining. If I was up in Alaska or something, I imagine the sun would either be always up or never up. I think it's always up at certain times of the year. I usually park out back when I'm working at the school. I have a parking spot back there, but on a day like today, when we've just started Christmas holidays and I'm the only one here, at least for the time being, I like to park up front so people know that I am here and they don't set the alarm or something with me in the building. Well, first things first, let's move this electrical outlet someplace else.
And just a friendly reminder that whenever you're working around live electricity, always shut the breakers off first.
So what I've done is I figured out exactly where I wanted my cut. And then I added 1.5 inches and put my straight edge down. The reason I added 1.5 inches is because that is this spacing right here. And this is the edge that is going to run along my straight edge. Now, some of you might be asking why I didn't just undo the clamps and disconnect the counter from the natural seam. Well, there's a reason for that. One, the seam is actually way out here, and I don't want that much of an overhang. I actually want to match up the overhang on the end here, which is 1/2 inch. The other reason too is I'd still have to cut it anyway, even if I did do it at this seam, because the arborate on top is not seamed at that point. It's a fairly clean cut, all things considered. Now I need to tuck this wire in before I do anything, and I will have to take this off before I do that to get it through. Okay, measure and cut this other side now. Now this one is going to be a trickier cut that I might have to freehand part of the way or figure out a way to reclamp it because I have this gas valve in the way. So I can only come up to here. Then I'll have to go around to the other side to line up my blade and make my cut from the other side. So that's what I'm gonna have to do. A little different than the other one. Okay, this should work. It's not the most ideal straight edge because it will flex a little bit if I push too hard against it sideways. But removing the gas valve here created the space for me to pass the saw through like that and use this as a straight edge. There's just enough space. I should be able to make a perfect meet up in the middle, providing I don't push against it while I'm using it as my guide. I'm very happy with this cut here. You wouldn't know that I came at it from 2 different directions. So now the easy part is done. I have to cut these front cuts here to remove this section. This will be a cut that I might have to do part of it with a reciprocating saw, part of it with my multi-tool, part of it with my circular saw. I'm gonna have to try and bring my cut in to follow this panel. And then that's where some bespoke items come into play. I'll have to make a piece of corner molding to fit over these areas to finish that. I also have to make some infill piece here because I can't just put the laminate along here and call it a day. There won't be anything behind it in this area here, this little pocket, and it'll eventually get broken out. So I have to build this out so that I create a flat surface all the way along here.
for my piece of arborite that's going to finish the edge. So yeah, this is where the tedious stuff starts. It would be nice if this panel, the whole thing, was easy to remove. Then I could take it off, cut it, and then reinstall it. But it's not. It's an integral part of the cabinet. Like, I have to break the cabinet apart to get it off. And at that point, then you'd have to ask yourself, why are we even keeping the cabinet in the first place? So I have to remove it in such a way, cut it out. Well, I have to cut it out in place, which makes things a little more challenging. I could also use my multi-tool, but the problem is that this is thick. It's 3/4 plywood plus another 1/2 inch MDF. Yeah, it's a thick cut to do with a multi-tool. So I think I will try and freehand this to get it started with my reciprocating saw. So in one of those here goes nothing moments, here goes nothing. The blade does want to wander though, that's for sure. It starts at about, I don't know, 10 degrees and then slowly wanders. On the back side, it's straight up. It's this front side that things are wandering over. I think I'm gonna have to cut the most of this with my circular saw. Well, that didn't work the way I was hoping it would. That blade wandered so far, it just made a mess of the corkboard front. I'm gonna put my square on it now, and I'm gonna make a line up here and up there and cut this from the outside. I should have done that from the beginning. I thought though, because the blade that I'm using is so short, it's a very short, stout blade, I didn't think it would flex like that, but sure does. Perpendicular cuts only with the reciprocating saw. I know that now. Yeah, I should have started that way. I'm gonna leave this final cut till the end because this is holding this up nicely, and will do so while I make my other cut over there. Doing a plunge cut with a saw that's not exactly made for plunge cutting. You have to be a little careful. It's a little tricky. Should probably be wearing some kind of dust mask for this. Okay, other than this rough start down here, it's not horrible. Well, I think it's time to break for lunch. I just swept up as much of the dust as I could because that's what happens when you renovate and you can only contain so much of it. So, yeah, I'm breathing in cork dust and wood dust here, so I think it's time to go and have some lunch. I'll let this dust settle and come back when the air is a little bit more breathable. So as I was gluing these little corner pieces back into place, I noticed that it was not nails that I was cutting through. They're bolts all the way down here on both sides, which just goes to show that you don't always know what's inside something because, yeah, they're completely sandwiched in the panel itself. Here's the panel piece right here. And you can see where the anchors are there, but there's nothing on either side to show that there would have been anchors in there. Would have been nice to know. Then again, had I known that there were anchors in there, I may not have elected to cut through it in the way that I did. But had I not cut through it in the way that I did, I don't know what I would have done. So perhaps it's better that I'm at the what's done is done stage. Yeah, if I would have known there were bolts running through there, I don't think I would have taken my my circular saw and cut that. But now what I need to do is finish this off. So to finish this off, I need to create some infill pieces here to create a flush surface all the way along. I know that it's 3/4 of an inch thick. I just have to get the depth right. And, you know, I think what I should probably use for this is 3/4 inch plywood. I've got lots of 3/4 inch scrap around, and I'll just have to cut a couple of strips on the table saw, hopefully getting this depth exactly correct. Oh, for length, I am at 20.5. And for depth, I am at 1/2 inch. Okay, I've got a scrap piece of 3/4 inch plywood here. The first thing I am going to do is cut it to 20.5 inches in length. Okay, now I'm going to rip a couple of 1/2 inch pieces. However, I don't want this pocket here, so I'm gonna take a few inches off on my first pass and then set the depth to 1/2 inch. All right, I have got a variety of depths here, so I'll just start mixing and matching and figure out which ones fit best. And I'm really happy with this one here. In fact, it actually friction fit in. There's no glue or nothing holding that in place. And it is a great fit. So, one of these others will work over here. I know it's a small caliber battery, but it's fully charged. Come on, give me more than one shot. Oh, come on. Seriously? Oh, hey, I've got my vacuum here. That's got a bigger battery. Likey. Okay, I'll let those dry for a bit, and yeah, then I'm ready to remove the arborite from the edge of that piece of countertop over there and glue it onto the face of here. So even though this has been glued to the edge of here for the better part of almost 20 years, my hope is that with the heat gun I can loosen the adhesive and that will cooperate for me. Now, if you're wondering why I sanded these edges now already, prior to actually having glued my new piece on, that's because these edges can be razor sharp. And when I glue my new piece on and I press it down, there's going to be a little bit of squeeze out from the glue. And if there is some squeeze out and then I go and I wipe along here with my hand or my finger, I could easily slice my hand open. I sand it first, so I know that I'm not going to cut myself on it, and then I glue it. Doesn't mean I can't come back to it afterwards and do a bit more sanding, just to clean up the edge, but it's really about prevention at this point. One of these scrap pieces of Arborite will actually work okay to spread this out. Trying to take it right to the edges too, so that I get a really good bond. Now, you see the way that I'm using my thumb to get a little squeeze out along the edge there? Had I not pre-sanded that, that would have cut me. Now, if I get on it right away, I can wipe this up with the dry cloth, a clean dry cloth. And here I'm just using the smooth round edge of my small metal scraper just to make sure I get really good adhesion. And the tape is just a precaution to make sure the ends don't lift on me. Well, that is down nice and tight. And this adhesive sets up really quickly. I'll just let that one sit for a while, and I'll move on to this one. Unlike the other side that laid down nice and flat right away, this side wanted to fight me a little bit. And so I'm just securing it all the way along so that it sets up perfectly with no areas that want to lift on me. Next steps. I need to make a trim piece to finish off this front corner. Not be too difficult. I don't want to get too fancy with it. I just need to make that piece come back far enough to cover up this blemish here and wrap around the front just a little bit, and that will clean up that front corner. And if I go 2 1/8 back, I'm good. And around the front, well, 1/2 inch or so. That's all I need. And since I'm going to be heading off in the direction of the shop, and the dumpster and my office is along the way, I might as well do a little cleanup and bring some of this stuff with me. I found this piece of moldy wood in the shop, and this will be perfect for me to transform into some nice corner molding. Let's make a couple light passes through the thickness planer to take that stuff off. One more after this. Well, those are good to sit for a while now. I ran them through the thickness planer, ran them through the joiner, clean up the edges, cut them to width. I've glued and clamped them together. When things are clamped under pressure like that, it doesn't take that long for this stuff to set up. So I will, I'll go grab a coffee and I'll come back, hit them with some sandpaper,
maybe install them and give them a quick shot of urethane, and they will be done. Well, here it is, my molding, and it will finish that off very nicely.
Well, that's the trim on one side done. The trim itself is made out of poplar and the cabinet is maple. So that's why it takes the urethane a little differently. It's also the fact that this was done many, many years ago. So that's had a lot of exposure to oxygen and carbon dioxide and maybe some indirect UV rays as well. But that doesn't look too bad. I think they'll be happy with it. I'm not happy with the way the trim fits on this edge, so I just need to give the edge a little trim. That folds down like that. I slip the box in, I put that back up into position, and then I tighten this up. And now that clamps the box against the wood. The power is on, I'm checking for polarity, and yeah, whenever I'm pushing a receptacle back into a metal box like this, it might be an unnecessary step, but I always like to wrap a little electrical tape around there, just to ensure that I don't accidentally short out the terminals on the edge of the box. If you look behind me over my shoulder there you have it. That is how you delete a section of counter and cabinet from the center of a cabinet. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to do so. See you next week.